All right, Jimmy, I'm gonna start this conversation with a question about dadhood, being a good dad. Would you say being a good dad is to go buy a bunch of like Orby guns, Nerf guns, and then just like plan it out to where you're just gonna like shoot your kids, shoot your boys like as hard as you can, and just
Yeah.
ambush your kids like all the time in
I
like
feel
these
like
like
I'm
Orby
being
wars?
baited. Am I being baited into
Jimmy, I
a
tried
little squabble?
beforehand. I told Stu to not ask dumb questions. That was a dumb question because the answer is he's asking that. So I we bought our kids some. I don't know if anybody's familiar with these Orby guns. Right? Orbeez are like the tiny little, they're little tiny balls. You put them in water, they hydrate and they become a little bit bigger, and then you can shoot them at each other. And so we bought our kids for Christmas. We got them some fully automatic. Well, actually, I'm gonna be fair. They switch between semi and fully. You get to choose. And dude, they are awesome. And so we had a little battle. Um, I immediately probably the day after Christmas, I went online. I bought two more for myself. And so we have these like epic battles that are they're fascinating. It's fascinating to me, the things that we can invest in that will just up our dad game or up our quality time significantly. And this is specific to my boys. My daughter's like, I'm not playing that's dumb. But my boys, I'll tell you, like every day when I go home, it'll happen today. I guarantee you, I already have 3 bags prepped that are all sucking up the water. They take about 4 hours to prep. There's 3 bags of like 5,000 Orbeez per. And it just is, it is, I know when I get home, and there may be neighbor kids that come over too now, and they're gonna be like, hey, dad, like we ready to throw down, ready to do this. And dude, they hurt, man. And you'll appreciate this, Jimmy, as a SEAL and as a tactician. My kids, I usually go against my two boys, and they've gotten so proficient that without any guidance, one will do like suppressive fire. So I'm kind of hiding, and the other will
Here
sneak
we go.
around, and I'll start taking, just taking rounds from both sides. I'm like, I'm screaming,
Hit him,
running.
hit him, and I'll flank him. I was like, well,
Dude,
yeah,
I
I
don't
love
even
it.
know how they
Love
learned
it.
that. One of them's 8, and he's like the little flanker, and
So
the other one
I
just,
highly suggest building maybe for your business a shoot house with an overhead catwalk.
yeah,
As
yeah.
I did for
Look forward to talking
birthday,
to that.
I had my son wanted to do something. He's now in airsoft and he's 10, but we found these the Nerf guns, but they're propelled by CO2 and they'll welch you.
Oh, wow.
The dads were the bad guys and the kids, got to go through and do clearances and they just
Yeah,
for this, man. And
that's
it's
so good.
what I'm hearing you guys talk about is getting the things like it used to be like, well, what do kids want? Man, what do you like? You were a little boy once.
100%.
What do you like? I like dirt bikes. Well, surprise, surprise. So did he. I like shooting stuff, and there it is, right? My girls, I'm like, hey, this is your dirt bike too. They're like, eh. So he just said, okay, I guess it's mine. It's like,
Yeah.
love it.
No, I love it. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, and that's, I mean, my wife said when we had started having kids, she said this years ago. I mean, my daughter's 13 now. And she said, hey, we have to have some kids so that you have somebody to play with. Cause like, that's not what I'm not here for that. We need to have some kids so you have some people to play with built in. And I'm like, yeah, 100%.
David just likes to beat up on his kids and just like pelt his kids
Dude,
with
they
these.
smoke me, man. Like they smoke me. I'm like in the deck
I
hiding,
saw
and I've
some
got,
videos, dude. You said some videos of you just like blasting your
oh,
son as
that's
he's
true.
like running off.
I mean,
I
he
saw
didn't
that.
take
Don't
cover,
lie.
dude. He
It
didn't take
should, right?
cover,
If
dude.
we're doing our job, they should be better than us at everything. It should. Like,
Yeah.
it's like they'll take to some things, and I remember that in GRS. I remember this. I think it's in the book. And there was a guy. I don't need to say his name or call sign, but he's kind of bragging about his kids, saying like, when like said something about him maybe being able to take him, and he goes, I grabbed my son, picked him up, cocked my hand, and said, "You'll never be, big enough or bad enough to kick my butt."
Mm,
Looked over and I said, "That's unfortunate." And the whole room just went quiet. And it was just like, what are you doing? Because the truth is they will be
Yeah.
stronger. I tell my son this at night, and it's a big deal. I say, hey, your powers are coming in. I need you to take it easy when you're playing with your 6-year-old sister. He's like, my powers are coming in. I'm like, it's going to be your job to protect this entire family. He's like, even you
yeah.
and me. And he just grows. And my
Yeah.
late 2 older and 1 younger than him, they're helping me raise a man. There's no secret that Rebecca's in charge, man. She's 16, she's bold, whatever, but she lets him feel like a little man because she knows I'm building a man, and they're
Yeah.
helping. and vice
Dude,
versa. No
I
respect.
love
Awesome.
that, man. Like I went out of town last week just for one night, and my son's 7, and we were at the dinner table the night before. I was like, "Hey, buddy, I'm gonna be out of town tomorrow." I was like, "Dude, you're the man of the house. Like, you gotta take care of this house tomorrow." And same thing, just like, "Yeah, okay." Shoulders get a little,
Uh,
"All right, Dad, I'll take care. Like, I'll be the man of the house. Sounds good." And like my wife's like, "Yeah, buddy. Hey, you gotta protect us tomorrow." And like it just just
elevates it.
confidence,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, it's
But
awesome.
yeah, I'll tell him, hey, you're the man of the house. You protect him. And he's like, yes, sir. And I look over at my daughter and she goes, I got him. She's like, she knows clearly. She's like, I'm in charge, but I get what you're doing.
Yeah,
100%. I
yeah.
love that.
That's good.
Awesome.
Well,
I
dude,
love
Jimmy,
that.
I'm excited about this conversation, man. Let's dive in. For our audience, for our listeners, just give a little bit of background about who you are. You got a pretty amazing resume. So let's go.
Brother, so a SEAL team background. I needed to grow up quick. I was getting in some trouble, and the SEAL teams has all kind of places to put that energy. A bunch of long lost brothers that also are in trouble, and it was good. It was a good fit. Transition out of there wasn't quite done with adventure, but was being called to do something kind of on my own terms, and got recruited into the CIA's GRS program. Did that for about 7 years as an instructor for the TDC Tactical Development Course. It's acronym soup. Explain it in the book, but it's obviously the CIA Central Intelligence Agency has GRS, Global Response Staff, protective officers, for case officers overseas. To be selected for that, it's called the TDC or Tactical Development Course, and the folks that run that is called the SPT, the Special Projects Team. So I was one of the Special Projects Team, and our job was to vet and train people. And you guys know this from all aspects of like the best, like the most cocky know-it-alls in the planet on the planet, and you have to get them on the same page. And it was awesome. It was a nightmare, but it was awesome. And God was prepping me for what I do now is all these cops, and this is a Marine, and that's a, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard, whatever. They're all coming together. And I'm like, you do it this way or just go somewhere else. And they dig it. Right. So it was practice. People say, how did you get into this line of work? I said, I had kids, so I aspire to be a good dad, a good husband. Um, and man, you can't leave a 2-year-old for 2 months, So I'm over in Libya or, Lebanon or wherever. And you're like, are they not doing that thing anymore? And she's like, no, she stopped that a long time ago. And I'm like, man, it just started stinging. And it's not like I'm going to bail on my country. I so much appreciate guys that are sacrificing now or guys that paid the ultimate sacrifice because I realize what they're sacrificing. Younger, I was like, whatever, man. I'm just like, yeah, die for my country, whatever. And now you're like, oh man, it's this good. It's like, and now you become this crazy patriotic, like you're this sappy grandpa that's busting a tear. You're like, hey man, what's happening right now? Or what? Whoa. Because you're just
That's
looking like,
awesome.
I get to be a part of this kid's life, man. Like, look at this little boy. He's awesome and he's respectful and he's fierce and all that. And his sisters, every one of them is different. And I'm like, man, does this guy deserve that? And God's saying, yeah. And I'm like, man, if you say so, you say so, but I'm not gonna ask stupid questions. I'm just in.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. My kids make fun of me now because we ended up watching the movie. I think it was Unstoppable about I forgot his last name. His last name is Robles, the ASU wrestler that had one leg out
Mhm.
of Mesa, Arizona. And I was watching like the preview because he comes from a rough background, and I'm
Yeah.
like, man, is anybody else? And I always just announce him. Is anybody else getting teary in here, or is it just dad? And my kids are like, dude,
Yeah.
like it was a commercial, bro. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, do you see like the way the mom and the boy, like it just, come on, guys, let's watch this movie. But
Yeah.
I love that you said it. And one of the things you say in the book, you talk about the idea of dying for your country, and I really love what you said. Would you really die for your country? And you said that it's easy to answer for two reasons. Primarily, you'll never be asked to prove it, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's just a numbers game too of how many people actually serve in the military and serve during a time of war and all the things, right? And then the second is dying as easily, right? Dying is easy, but it's living that's a challenge. And I love how you highlight the intentionality because it sounds so honorable, right? Like, would you die for your country? Would you die for your family? Of course I would. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
every day. Okay, cool. Like, then how do you live for them? How do you show up for them? What are
Yeah,
you
show me.
doing? Yeah, show me, right? Show me.
Yeah.
And I love that challenge.
Yeah.
Awesome. Show me. Show me what
Yeah.
that looks like.
Yeah. I tell people, like I think I put in there, you can accidentally die. You
Hmm.
can't accidentally live. So I think we're just straight up lazy nowadays, and people want the answer that points to them doing nothing different. Whether it be politics, it's the libraries, it's the meetings for local town council, all of which I've been at, all of which, there's a mutual respect for the local leaders, and there's an absolute hatred from the other side, the people that would call me enemy. They hate me. I mean, demonic scream in my face at events, and I'm like, hey, bro, like pray for you. They're like, oh, we were so there's a Trump rally at the Gaylord here in Denver, walking with my children, got a suit jacket on, I got a Trident pen, and I'm just going to, just show my support for how I'm going to vote. And we passed this. There's something going on. It looks like a scrap going on and whatever. And the kids are funny because they've got their new, the vernacular we had. Like I don't understand it. And they're like, and we've been in line for hours, and they're like, hey, there's beef up there. And I'm like, are you smelling food? Like, what's up? My son, they pick it up. They got good SA, man, situational awareness. They're like, yeah, there's beef up there. Like there's, and my daughter, my 14-year-old Sarah, she's like, hey, there's a fight. Like there's some kind of fight. And I'm like, huh. Like, you guys just keep your, heads up and just stay with me, whatever. And we go in, and this guy, these women are just looking to my, yeah, you and all this stuff. And these families are just walking by. And this guy that we'd been talking with gets over in the dude's face. I go, hey, brother, wouldn't waste my time. This guy's just mad at the world. And I go, pray for you. And he's like, F you, Graham. And they're like, how did you know your name? How do they know your name? I'm like, the same people at the same stuff, and they know to hate me, right? So, and my kids were like, he's like, you got enough bodyguards with you? And I was just there with my kids, but I look around, and there's like 5 dudes all swole up, like, you mess with this dude? And I don't even know him. And he's like, can you bring bodyguards? I was like, man, I'm here with my kids, and we just, off we go. And then we get to have an amazing conversation from that point into the building. It's like, guys, expect it. Like this is coming. It's like, it's not easy. People don't like that, but that confrontation, it doesn't really fire me up. I'm like, okay, man, you get
It's
to
a
sit there, so do
it's a
I.
fascinating idea too, because I had a similar conversation with my son, my oldest son. He's now 11, and I love how you talk about like these kids are getting like legit. This kid is getting to the point where, and I also have him weightlifting now because he loves football, and I'm like, dude, this kid he's gonna get to the point where like it's not even a competition. Like my hand hurts today because we were wrestling, and I think he bent my finger down. Like this finger is now crooked. Like I barely get my wedding ring on from last winter because like I think they dislocated my finger. I'm like, dude,
Yeah,
I played like
football.
8 years. Yeah, dude, I played 8 years of football and I never had dislocated fingers. And I, through college, and these kids are like literally dislocating fingers. I'm like, what are we doing right now? Anyways, but it was a fascinating conversation around manhood because I took him to, he's a Ravens fan. I took him to a Ravens Browns game, and these grown men at a children's game. I mean, it's NFL, but it's a kid's game. And these guys don't play. They're not on the field. They're fans. And they start like just violence and fighting and all that. And I'm like, my son's like, why, Dad? Why? I'm like, man, let's talk about manhood and let's talk about what it really means to put your emotions and your heart into things that really matter. And I think we oftentimes, I love how you frame that, Jimmy. Oftentimes we get sucked into being reactionary,
Yeah.
and God calls us to something different. I mean, the Bible talks about, Proverbs talk about, the Psalms talk about. There's so many references in the Bible that we're called to not be angry, to not be reactionary, to be above that. And man, we just fall to it so quickly.
Yeah, and not pretend you didn't see it, right? So
Yeah.
then in the book called Secundus Optio, it just means second option. I was this is what I was modeled growing up, is pretend you didn't see that thing. Like, like, oh, I should probably stand, but I'm uncomfortable, so I'm gonna pretend I didn't see it. But then I feel like a coward for the rest of my life. And if you've experienced that, you'll remember the day you die. Why didn't I speak up? Why didn't I say something for that lady? Why didn't I, whatever? Or third option, go crush the dude, right? And that got me in trouble. I've done it. I'm in the SEAL teams, bit of a reputation, not a good one, but it's like, all right, well, if you're gonna run your mouth, I guess we're gonna, close it. And that got me in some trouble. Pre-SEAL teams, that got me in big trouble. I had to work through that in order to be eligible to enlist, right? It wasn't like so, but I was never really modeled that middle part. Like, how do you, like I talked to that guy, and I've got this wrong more than I've gotten it right. That's why I got it right on this day. We say when you mess up, it's just practice for the next time. So the next time's always going to happen. And it did at that Trump rally with my kids behind me. I'm like, all right, brother, I'll pray for you. And he's like, yeah, blah, 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 in front of my kids. It used to be like, brother, now we're all rolling around the ground. And the news cameras are there, and here come the police, and then they get to pick who's the least uncomfortable to prosecute. It's a mess, right? But what's the objective, right? So when I walked away, that guy goes, man, I don't know what you said to that dude, but you got him more fired up. You didn't cuss, you didn't lose your temper. And man, he was hot daddy mad more than anybody else. I'm like, yeah. One of my favorite quotes I just learned recently, I think it was Harry Truman, and he said, yeah, you gonna give him hell? He goes, I didn't give him hell. I told him the truth. They just thought it was hell. Right. So when you speak the truth in their face, they're gonna lose their mind. And my kids got to see that, they got to see me doing it right for once, and I'm getting better. I'm willing to look at it. And I was just working right before I came down here, a new class called de-escalation. It's based off that Secundus Optio chapter in the book. And as I put that book out, more people were like, can you teach me that? Because I was never taught how to talk to a man when things get when the temperature goes up a notch, stupid stuff falls out of my mouth. That's like because of that defensive, like the Ravens game. We're from Kansas City. We live in Denver, but my son's a Chiefs fan, so you can imagine all that. My brother and my nephew came out for a game, and he got to go. So his first NFL, he's just like, oh, all right, we're at Broncos. They're playing the Chiefs, and like watching grown men run up to women, Chiefs, all this other stuff, and right there in the line. I mean, big, drunken, burly dudes. And I just looked up and I go Chiefs. And they look at me and they're like, what's up with this guy? Right. And then they just walk on. And the women are like, thank you. Like, thank you. This is terrifying. I'm like, yeah, it shouldn't be. It's unfortunate.
I'm a Raiders fan, dude. So
Like my
I
son,
get
like,
I get no love in this part of the country, but that's fine.
right.
I don't want any Dunkos love, man.
And he sees the bait and he knows now not to take it, so we got to
Mm.
have that conversation. I'm like, hey, have fun. But and then he's like all down and depressed. And I'm like, hey, you in charge? Are they in charge of your feelings? You should root for your team even when they're down. It's the one instance where the Broncos beat the Chiefs. It's like, it's like, this is crazy. I'm like, and he was all like, ugh. And I was like, hey man, might want to check your attitude or this might be your last game. And he's like, oh, hey, yeah, come on guys, get back in there. But it's all teaching opportunities. They don't know how to be an adult unless we show them. So trying to figure that out.
Dude, your book is really really good, man. Called The Return of Man. I was traveling last week. Like I said, I was flying. Had an early morning flight. I was going to Dallas, and I was reading your book. And I was in the chapter where you're talking about um, a girl committing suicide at your kid's school, and you were the daddy daughter dance was canceled, and you decided to do it anyways, but you did it at the Great Divide in Castle Rock, and you were dancing with your daughters. Dude, I lost it. I
Yeah.
started crying right then and there, reading that section. I'm also trying to starting to get teary right now just thinking about it. Like I lost it, and I started crying, and like the lady next to me sitting, like she looked over, she like, why? And she's like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I had to close the book and just like take a minute and like put it down. But, like, just really, really good, dude. This every chapter, there's something really incredible to think about from a biblical standpoint, from a biblical view on what manhood really looks like. And like you said in the book, like we're falling away from it,
Yeah.
and we need to get back to it. If you could just give us a little background about what made you want to write this book and just the genesis of this book and what we need to get out to the world here on this podcast um, about it.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. When you have kids, I think if you're a protector at heart, and I don't know that I would have defined myself that way initially, um, you have kids and you hand them to somebody else, whether it be a Sunday school teacher or a teacher or whatever. And to me, there's this unspoken transaction that happens that says I would die for my kids, and you better too, or they're not going to school here, right? And there's not, they don't understand that. I've heard teachers say, I'm here to teach, it's not my job to protect your kids. And I'm like, it's every adult's job to protect kids. Like, how did you not know that? Right? The big ones have to protect the little ones. There's no future otherwise. So when I saw that people not only didn't know how to do it, they didn't even think it was their job. So we started putting that out, and it took a while. And then, based on my experience, in particular with the CIA part, because that one, GRS is a unique model that, again, everybody's on a different page and you have to be on the same page. Well, the way you do it with operators is say, if you can act right and get on the same page and everybody's what I now call uniform, safe, and accurate, the USA standard uniform, same page, safe and accurate. Can you hit the thing under pressure, or is it correct? If you can do this right, then we're going to give you a job that makes six figures and you're only working 6 months out of the year. It's hard work. It's going to pay you, but then you get to go home for like literally 6 months, 2 months on, 2 months off. And guys are like, okay, fine. You know, and then they do it and then they go, oh, this is way better for small unit stuff. Well, that was exactly a perfect fit to place over schools and churches. Like we're literally reaching out to JD Vance because he's coming out hard about protecting schools. And what I'm seeing nationally is just, man, we could fast forward by years, a more efficient model. But you aspire to do something like that. And you go, okay, let's train these men. And then you hit a roadblock when you realize half of them don't believe they're men. And you're like, hold on a second. I'm not putting you in front of my kid as a model if you're not sure you're a man. So then you spend time in scripture and spiritual journaling and all that and say, let's square this away. Um, what is a man? Right? Because everybody's like, real men, real men. That's disgusting how much stuff real men do. And it's usually coming from some shell of a man. And and I said, are you an adult male human? Like much like the Matt Walsh movie, like what is a woman? Are you an adult? Yeah. Were you born with nuts? Yeah. Then congratulations, you made it. And it sounds funny, but I got guys that are easily older than me, and they're like, "Thank you." Like, because I just always wondered, am I a real man? And then, in the book, I talk about that, but is it a strong man? What's a strong man? So I asked God about this, wrote it down, and the answer we landed on was a man with integrity, a steadfast adherence to a strict moral or ethical code. Steadfast, not kinda, steadfast. Does it mean Christian? No, it means integrity, right? Okay, so if you're a strong man, it means a man with integrity. And then I felt like God was taking it one step further, but you're asking me what's a good man. I'm like, well, what is a good man? He's like a godly man, a man that aspires to that Bible, that the word, the truth that is going to lead others to a better place, to eternity. So that's a really good definition of a strong, godly man. And then people can just relax for a minute and then just focus on, now what are we gonna do about it? Okay, now that you're not a train wreck, you know what I mean? You're a better example. Now I'll put you in front of kids because you know what they need is an actual, I say saying strong words is it's not even close to a substitute for real strength. But guys don't even know what real strength is, so it ends up being, and I love all these things, by the way, shooting and jujitsu and big trucks and fighting and talking smack and smoking and drinking. And I'm like, I just disagree, boys. It's like if you're going to do it has nothing to do with you being a man.
Yeah, such an interesting. Oh, sorry. So do you have a question?
Not necessarily a question, just a comment. It was I'm reading the Chronicles of Narnia series with my daughter right now, and our guest that last week we interviewed, his name's Clint Bruce. He's also a Navy SEAL, and he had referenced this, and I had just read it in the book. He talked about Aslan, and they comment on Aslan the lion. The question is, he's a lion. Is he dangerous? And the answer was yes, he is dangerous, but he's good. He's real good. And that just like, yeah, you're a man, you're dangerous, you're formidable, you're strong, you have
Yeah.
integrity. Yeah.
I don't know if you follow Jordan Peterson. Um,
Not
he's
not a lot, but I know a lot of
I
people that do.
highly recommend a couple clips, and he's got a 7-minute segment with John Stossel. He also does an interview with Jocko Willink, and the word he uses is formidable, and it's the right word. He's like, men should be formidable. He's like, it's not even an option. Like you can't be good if you're not strong. Period. And he doesn't mean muscles strong, like Jocko, uh, formidable dude, like strength
Yeah.
wise. But I would say, and this isn't disrespectful at all, Peterson is far more powerful than Jocko.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Just the depth of his mesh, the breadth of his reach, all that stuff. And he's nailing it. He's bringing it and calling men to, it's okay to be dangerous. It just needs to be under voluntary self control. Like people say, you made it through buds, you must be tough. I'm like, I'm stubborn. like I can be super stubborn, and I thought that was a bad thing. And in 2020, I saw my wife being just super stubborn. I'm like, oh, here she goes. It's like, what are you going to be stubborn about? Like, if you figure that out, you're a world changer, right? Because now you're not
Mm.
going to back off. And they're like, oh, if the woke agenda comes for you, double down. It's your only option because they'll eat your lunch. If you show weakness, if you back up. And I leaned into it the several times locally, including in Parker, I leaned into it and they just go away. Right. And there's only one side that's left with any kind of respect, and I'm like, there's people that don't like me within our local government, but they respect me because they know that I'm standing for their grandkids when they're not, because their job says they can't, because they're a cop or they're a fed or they're whatever. They're like in secret places, go Jimmy. But then you can't stand. I'm like, I can't is a strong word. You choose not to because your God can't afford it. Mine
Mm.
can't. I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah, dude, it's so interesting too. And as you talk about manhood and strength, and what I find so interesting about it is a lot of the people that rail against, they call it whatever, toxic, and if you step aside and you take away some of those things, just have a real conversation. It really boils around, okay, do you want a good man who is willing to serve and protect you and love you, as he is called to do by the God of the universe? Does that sound appealing to you? Of course it does. Well, then what's the problem, right? But it's so interesting to me that in the culture that we currently live, where God has been removed, and this idea of manhood is dominance, and it's we had a John Tyson on the podcast. He's not from the state. He's Australian. He's like, man, you Americans, like, your language is so aggressive. He's like, you guys are always talking about crush it and kill it and destroy. And he's like, it's just such a dominance driven culture. And he's a pastor, author, awesome dude. But he's like, and it's not good. and I agree, because there's this sense of, if I'm not dominating, then I'm not a man. But there's so many, as you said, there's so many examples of shells of men, that not only is it impacting boys and their view of what manhood is, but it's impacting women and how they view manhood, because they think that there's this, they think that if I'm coming, I'm saying, hey, I want to be a strong, formidable, dangerous man who serves, loves, honors you as the way that my God calls me to, which is to put you before myself. That's what I desire. Man, if we just really regain that truth, that foothold. And I'm curious on your view. I'm a very optimistic person. This is an area where I'm like, there's areas of influence and there's areas of impact, but this is one where I'm like, man, there's a tidal wave, and it's just, and I think it requires faith, and the hand of God can hold that tidal wave back. But man, it is like, it's kind of it's sad to me. It's sad to me, as a football coach, and I look around the football field and I'm like, man, these 20 boys, like half of them, we're going to be their example. The coaches are going to be their example, right? And what happens outside of the field. It's just a fascinating conversation, because I think there's so many lies around it.
Yeah, there's a thing. I've also wrote a kid's book right on the heels of this one, and there's a chapter called High Five, like HI, like high five, and I can't remember if it's in that book or not, if I reference it. But and I was living in Montana at the time, and I was helping out at the church, and then just say, hey, just watch and see if there's an opportunity, if God speaks to you about something. And I met some kids, and it was that dead fish handshake, the princess handshake, and I'm like, what's happening right now? And after the third one, I'm like, I know what I'm doing next week, right? So I teach them this high five thing, and I'm like, okay, here's the deal. There's 5 things. I wrote them on the board. First one's posture. Go push your head toward the ceiling. Say towering. They said towering. Go like this, cowering. All right, 2-inch difference between towering and cowering, right? That was from a leadership class I heard just forever ago, right? Then it was eye contact. Your eyes, the lamp of your soul. Look at me, like look at an adult, walk across the room, so second one's eye contact. Then it's strong voice. So strong voice is, hi, my name is Jimmy. It's not screaming in their face, but it's not, like that kind of thing. Firm handshake, not hard, not trying to hurt them, but don't give me that dead fish thing again, right? Because it's saying something and it ain't good. And then the last one, smile. I'm gonna hold that smile, like look at him. When my son does this, freaks people out. Grab your hand, he'll shake your hand, and when it's time to let go, one more second. You know what I mean? And people are like, what just happened there? You mess with, we fighting? What's going on? But he's like, hey, your kid did this thing. I don't know. And I do it too. And some people, they're just like, what's going on? Because people bail. They're like, hi, how you doing? And their eyes dart to the floor. And you just told me something, and that something's not good. You probably didn't even know you did it, right? And then I'm like, man, what's going on here? And then I met their parents. And I'm like, they didn't know either, right? So the reason they didn't know is that we taught them. So, when I say able shepherd, my company, able means capable. Shepherd means teacher and leader and protector. So teach them, right? Lead them, like teach them what, right? Not wrong, like how to shake a hand, whatever. Lead them to heaven, not hell. Like literally, Dad, what are we doing here? I led you here, but you're standing in front of the gates of heaven or the depths of hell. Like if you're honest and you've got integrity, how do we end up down here? Because I led you here, right? That's horrible, man. That's nightmare material. And protectors, some people would say to get to them, you got to go through me, right? Which is a principle of protection for bodyguards. It's like, where should you be standing, between the package and the greatest threat? Translated, to get to them, you got to go through me. And it's winner take all, right? And that doesn't mean just physically, because guys like that, like, I'll fight. It means spiritually, then it means mentally, then it means physically, in that order. Because like, I don't know about you, but I haven't been in a physical fight in, I think I calculated this 12 years. I got punched a dude 12 years ago, right? And it's like, it was silly and it was whatever, it was necessary, but it was still silly. But it was, I'm like, and most people I don't know have not been in a self-defense fight, not talking smack in the bar, defending your children, right? So I'm going to put it at third. It's important because like even school shootings, they're not, because I was just studying Sandy Hook and doing some papers this morning. It's not high risk, it's high cost. It can't happen once. Like each one of these kids is my everything, right? So we must be prepared with that. To be honest, though, the numbers say it is number three, but you will defend your kids spiritually and mentally today. And you better be ready for it. And if you're not healthy, then this is what protection is. You guys know this. It's self-defense, defend yourself. Now stand in front of another. So if I can't defend myself spiritually, I'm no good standing in front of you. You know, mentally, I'm just playing games and my head's all jacked up. What am I going to do for you? And then physically, what happened there? Two heroes, a principal and a psychologist, said, stop, drop it. They shot this young man, murderer, shot them both, stepped over him, and shot a bunch of 6 and 7 year olds multiple times, right? So define better. Would have been better if they'd have been both, not only have the heart, but the capability. It's not hard to shoot a gun, right? But on that day, it would have been better, right? If they'd have known a little bit about that because they had the time. You know, and they're heroes, don't get me wrong, because they stood up against, you know, unwinnable odds. It just wasn't effective, unfortunately. Right. So that formidable, man, comfort's the opposite of that. So comfort makes everybody go like, yeah, I know he's pretty tough. He's a pretty good guy. He's a provider, but the neighbors have a Bentley. You know, you're like, come on, what are we doing? Like, what's happening? Somebody kicks a jukebox and the music stops. They're going to respect all of a sudden that provider guy that figures stuff out. Right. The boy culture. So I'll take a break in a second. The Boy Crisis is a book and it's fantastic. And I'm pretty sure that's where I got this. They talk about those movies we love where the cowboy comes in, the
Yeah.
town's all getting shot up and all that. And here comes the hero. And then he gets rid of the villain and there's a problem. He's still here. That's why he rides off in the sunset because they're scared. They're like, well, we were scared of the bad guy. But now the bad guy's gone. We're comfortable. Now we're kind of scared of you. Why are you scared of me? Because you're strong and you could take our stuff, but I wouldn't. But you could, and you should probably leave. So you could go stronger or you can kick me out of here. And it's a pattern in the world. Let's kick him out. It's like, what is happening? Give us your number in case a bad man shows up. I also want to
Yeah.
get rid of the good man. You're like, this is a foolish plan.
Stu,
Well, dude,
isn't your cowboy movie that you try to emulate the Three Amigos? Isn't that the one that you said like that's the one you
Perfect
really
example.
yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Well, look up here. Okay. Anyways.
Uh, Jimmy, let's talk about Abel Shepherd and specifically, let's talk about school shootings. Uh, your book hits on it quite a bit. You know, feed from the front, not feed from the rear. You do these comparison between it. I thought it was fascinating. The two school shootings, Uvalde versus the school shooting in Tennessee, and the difference between those two.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of schools, there's a lot of churches, there's a lot of businesses just one either don't know or two just not getting it right. And I think there's a lot of work to be done, and Abel Shepherd is doing that. Let's talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, the feed the front. Well, let me talk about feed the rear. Feed the rear looks like this is that, Uvalde, I've been there. I was called to Uvalde to help, right? To just
Yeah,
what can we do? What are the options and all that? And I was deselected because I wasn't from Texas, which I think was just not it was a mistake, right? I was like, well, we can't accept help from out of Texas. And I look at the representative's aide and she's like, I can't believe he just said that. And the guy immediately was like, what did I just say? And I could have said, how's that working out for you? Not the right time. I said, I'd reconsider. Like, come on, man. There's
yeah,
like dead children and you're talking politics.
mm,
Anyways, um, the simple truth is they just didn't know what to do, right? So everybody gives them a hard time. And because it was 77-minute response, it was actually under 3. So it was a very good response time. They came in, they made a tactical mistake. It's called combat clearing or peeking or pieing. And there's nothing wrong with those tactics done in context. They were just done on an active shooter, which I wouldn't recommend, right? The active shooter, you don't have element of surprise. They know you're coming and they got busted. So when they looked in, they got busted. And now you're taking fire through a non-ballistic wall. So you're either going to die, shoot back towards children, or you're going to run. And they ran, right? Just fear, they just ran. But I would, again, not picking on them. I say we're not nitpicking, we're fine tuning. The rest of us can learn this. Those guys will regret for the rest of their life not making 3 more steps. Because if they did, it would have been over. And it's dangerous because the job's dangerous, but they're wishing right now, oh Lord, if I could have taken those 3 steps, I would. But now it's too late because when they ran a thing called feed the rear, not only do you want to go, you want to hold others back from going. So there were guys that wanted to go, but they were talked out of it. Because if you go and you're the hero, it reminds the world that I wasn't. And that went on for 74 more minutes. That's unthinkable because children died, right? So that's called feed the rear. When I want to look busy, go help other kids. That's not part of the problem's that. The problem's not she can't get out of that window. The problem is clearly down the hall, but it's dangerous. So let's feed the rear, get hand sanitizer. Let's do texts. I need more equipment, best equipment money can buy. The one thing missing, that one dude that says on me and takes a step, right? So now let's talk about Tennessee. When Officer Rex gets out of the car, and unbelievable, the staff that gave him a quick brief, very concise brief, what she thought to be true. It ended up being changing, but she didn't know. She was right when she said it. Hands, keys, does not, they shouldn't have been that close to the building, but hey, okay, I dig it. Kids are upstairs, shooter on the main floor. I hear shots on the main floor, missing a couple kids, right? And he's like, thank you, ma'am. He walks up, and what he does is powerful. When you watch it again, you're going to see a guy say, give me 3, let's go. And then he takes a step. It's not, you two, go, because that is feed the rear. Like somebody else should go. And what I saw him say without saying it is, if none of you go, I'll do it myself. I say shepherding is I'm going, you're invited. I can't make you go, but those are kids. I'm going, you're invited. So then I jumped quickly because recently I had family in town over the holidays and we watched 13 hours. And I don't watch that lightly because that was my team. I was the team lead in Benghazi, Libya, 3 weeks prior to that attack. And Tyrone Wood, who wasn't, by the way, the team lead, the movie makes him the team lead. He was not. There's another guy. He basically quit and said, I'm going, you're invited. Like none of you have to go, but I'm going to go. But he wasn't even the team lead. The team lead was a quiet dude. I know his name. I'm not going to say it. That's the guy I turned over with. And they just could not get into action. He's like, enough. Like I'll find a new job, but Americans are dying. I'm gonna jump in the car right now. And guys are like, I'm going with them because they were chomping at the bit. Right. So that feed the front's a big deal. It's out of fashion. But as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. That 10-year-old upstairs, he's got that look in his eye. My girls do too, man. They're bold and they're like, I didn't ask. And they'll walk right past you, like not to me per se, but no, I taught them when they were this tall that they say no to even me, right? If I'm tickling them or something, they go, no, I stop. And they go, again, and we start playing again. They go, no, stop. Why? Because they need to know that their no is powerful, even to the biggest figure in their life. So it better be for that kid. It better be for that dude, right? So they're respectful, but they know when to line out, like even adults, like, hey, don't talk to me like that, you know? So that thing has to be grown, and homes are choosing comfort. And I'm like, I'm not, right? I love my kids and they love me. And my goal is that they would, come back home and spend time with me and Rachel and each other. Right. And it's looking pretty good so far. So, if we figure something, people are like, oh, your girls, they thank you, Jesus. They look like their mama, not me, but they're beautiful. Right. And they're like, oh, those teen daughters, man, you get those teen years, you're in trouble. And I'm like, bring it on, man. We'll figure it out. And it's just, there hasn't been a speed bump. They're just awesome.
I love it, man. Love it.
That's, one of the things I just want to highlight that I actually took note of this when I was prepping for this podcast, and it was on your site on the Able Shepherd. It just struck me. There are two things struck me. One, it's not necessarily delineated as a mission statement, but it says Able Shepherd operates from the belief that the immediate safety of those entrusted to your care cannot be delegated. You can be the fastest and most capable first responder in your immediate vicinity. That, and then there you broke out able and shepherd, and the able equals capable part. And it was, earlier you touched on the shepherd, what that means, but the able part really stuck out to me because it's almost like the able part has become unpopular. Like the idea that I can skillfully wield violence is a bad thing, and it's interesting to me because when you're in that spot, like my kids, I mean, I saw it. We took my daughter to Vegas to a soccer tournament, and of course we get in the bus, and the first thing that happens, there's this guy that maybe, I don't know, he's just real, we're all kind of sitting close, he's real aggressive, kind of loud. And so immediately I stood up and I put myself between him and the kids, just as a purely a whatever. And he said something real aggressive, like, kids are the most important thing, don't you think? And I said, yes, and the most important aspect, and this was after just building. I said the most important thing about that, and I said it calmly. I said the most important thing about that is that I would literally take out any threat against my kid or any of these kids. And just kind of looked at him because it's such a weird environment. But the reason I did that is because I saw my daughter and the other kids, it was all girls, they started getting really, really, really uncomfortable. And we got off the bus. I didn't really address it, but my daughter addressed it. And what it stuck with me was, and I don't know, this guy might have wiped the floor with me. I don't know. He didn't seem all there. He's pretty stout fella. But it was the idea that in those moments, that's exactly what your daughters, your sons, your family is looking for. And not even them, but the other people, there. And it's exactly what you want and need at the moment, right? And so the able part of it really stuck with me because I think it says two things. One, all of us can be a difference maker, and two, it's not bad. Like it's very good, as a matter of fact, right? And so I love how you break that out and the meaning behind able shepherd. It's not just shepherd. We all want to be a shepherd. We highlight it in church. We highlight it everywhere, but it's not. If you give me a shepherd, I don't even know the name, the staff or whatever. Like I don't know what I'm going to do with that, right? I'm not able. I'm not capable. I don't know what I'm doing. Well, if we projected that to the other areas of our life and sought to be different, man, what a powerful thing. And that's what I love about this company that you run.
Yeah, thank you. And that able, when you look for, like, I didn't see it as much, obviously, now that's been a big part of, Able Shepherd changing from Duty to Act LLC to Able Shepherd. Now, when you read the Bible, you'll see to him who is able, to who is able, and they're always talking about Christ. They're referring to a guy and they're recommending, like, David was capable of doing that. Christ did that because, a lot of guys, that negative self-talk of Christians is like, I'm kicking my own butt and then the world joins in. I'm like, I don't see that's Christ-like, I'm just a sinner and I suck and I'm worthless and only through Christ. As a dad, if my son talked like that, I'd be offended. I'm like, don't talk about my son like that. I am your son, I know, but don't talk about him like that.
Don't talk about
He's like,
I like that. I'm
what?
going to use that.
And got to be like, what is just? Like, you're just a sinner. That's all you are. Like, the Holy Spirit's living inside you and you're just, right? And you're all these horrible things. It's almost saying you shouldn't trust me because I'm just whatever. Trust God. People are like, I already trust God, but I guess you're a scumbag. It's like, it's just a weird communication, right? So if you understand truly, like, what's the truth? Like, even the guy raising his voice and you go, what's the truth? I was in a restaurant, some guys about to go at it, and I stood up and stood in front of my family, and it's like, the truth is, you guys can roll around and break all the tables and do all that. The police will come. I've been there. Like, you can do it. You just can't bring it over here because when adults lose their mind, kids get hurt, and you're not bringing that mess over here. But have at it, man. I'll get some popcorn and cheer for you guys if you want, but it ain't coming over here. But then the whole room feels it. And they're like, who's that? And they're like, why is he standing? Is he a cop? Is he going to fight? Does he know one of the guys? But all of a sudden, everybody, including the guy, was like, who's that? And everything just kind of chilled out, right? We're not necessarily called to fight, but we're always called to stand. And even if you do fight, you're not called to win. What if somebody came at your daughter and then you stood and got beat up? I mean, she didn't. It's my job to stand. I don't know what's going to happen, but then God takes over and it's like, well, cool. Like we've had some
I
people.
mean, I know karate, dude. So like, I have
No, you
steps to. No,
What
just
about
kidding.
you, bro?
No,
That-
it's awesome. I mean, and one thing that is, as you were talking, one thing that I think we really bear to remember, because people, oh, Jesus was a pacifist. Okay, well, read the story about when he exorcises demons. Read the story about when he goes into the temple and flips the tables. But I'll tell you my favorite. Like, I just read this the other day, and I was like, I literally stayed on this like again and again. And it's in John. It's more specific to the book of John. But when it talks about when Judas comes in the garden and Jesus says, I am. And in John, it says they like hit the ground by his words. And I thought through that, when you meditate on that, the strength, dude, the strength of Jesus just saying, I am. And they like can't even stand in the presence of that. I love that version in the Gospels of that moment, because you realize the only reason any of this happens, the only reason that Pilate or Caiaphas, I'd probably say his name wrong. But any of these things happen is because God and Jesus permits it. That's it.
That,
That's it.
yeah.
Right. And there's a strength and there's I mean, it's wielding it that what those dudes felt was probably a violent reaction, right? And so there's some strength in that. And there's back to Aslan's point or whatever. It's good. It's always good.
Yeah, that's people. Jesus was a pacifist. You know who says that the most? Pacifist.
Yeah.
Jesus was a warrior, and it says like if the Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name. Who says that? Warriors, right? So I truly believe that voluntary self-control, that being powerful but under self-control, that whole people are like, I said, well, obviously, like, did Jesus ever slay, multitudes? Did he come out and slay multitudes? And like, well, that's Old Testament. I'm like, but if you believe in a triune God, then it's the same guy. Yes, he did. Because if you understand, you go into theology, like Jesus was there. He was right there, same guy. And people are like, it's not, I'm not comfortable with that. Of course, here comes the word comfort again. That's like, I like it when I can just do nothing and walk around. And then I see a little girl getting violated and I drop to my knees and pray. I'm like, I'm not saying don't pray. I'm going to pray before, during, and after that entire thing, and I'm going to pray that God leads me to that and that I don't take it too far. There was an incident that I caught on camera. I think I put it in, we call it damn our camera down because the guy tried to say, put your camera down, but he goes, damn your camera down. And I'm like, he's nervous, but I'm just standing there and I'm ready. I can feel old Jimmy swelling up and I'm like, I'm going to crush this dude. Like he's grabbing this woman. I said nothing, but I'm filming and here he comes, hot daddy mad. And I'm like, man, I started feeling 25 again. I'm like, I'm going to mop the floor with this dude. And then I just put a line on the ground. I said, he crosses that line and we're going to shift gears. But I didn't say anything and he felt it. He hit the brakes, said something foolish, or I'll call the police for violation of privacy. I said, do it. Looked at me like, what the? And he leaves and runs after her. Now I do run after them because he's like running at her. And then their heads just dropped. They walked to the car. We didn't do anything. And I go, good. And then they get to the car and he goes, have a nice day. And I go, you too. And I'm like, what just happened, man? That would have like kept me out of jail in my teens, right? It's like, what's going on here? But it's that I call it secundus optio in the book, but it's that, the woman caught in adultery and Jesus again, he can call down a legion and kill all these people. And if you ever, you've been overseas and even downtown in different parts of not comfort, not Douglas County, Colorado, even there it could happen. But there's this thing that happens in a mob, this mob medical frenzy, a frenzy. We're trained to spot the early stages so you can get your officer out of there as a protective officer and get your protectee and all that kind of stuff. Because once it turns, this energy starts making weak men feel strong. They start doing things they normally wouldn't do, and it's reckless and it's actually evil, right? So that thing going, man, if you don't insert truth or get out of there, it's dangerous, right? But Jesus chose to step into that to show us this. And then he did what I call X Factor, that weird thing where it's like, turn around and start writing on the ground. And they're like, what's he doing? And then he stands up and just says true words. So I say, ask wise questions, say true words. And he said some true words. It's like, who hears without sin? Go ahead and throw the first stone. And then they're like, did he write my name? Because I was with old girl last week. Like all this stuff's going in their head. And it was brilliant because then they're gone. And then he's like, hey, where are your accusers? Neither do I accuse you. Go and sin no more. It's like, just, okay, ready, break. It wasn't right what you're doing, but act right. And I believe that. Then I was like, I was never taught to do the middle part. And then I was like, yes, I was. Maybe not by family members or a mentor or a fighter or a SEAL, but Jesus did show that. So now I'm on this endeavor to try to work it out with other men. So what could you say or do to take all the steam out of that situation so you don't have to fight? But, back to Peterson's point, you can't be weak and only be able to turn the other cheek and call that a virtue. You're just weak. It's like, oh man, your dad got slapped. And then he got slapped again. It's like, that's all he's got. Or your dad could just absolutely annihilate that guy. But he didn't. And I'm not sure why he didn't. But then he actually walked the dude over, talked to him, and the dude's running the whatever. Now he's doing better. That's the real virtue of I could do this, but I'm not going to.
I love it, man. Well, dude, with just a few minutes left, I want to hit on this conference coming up, Men Who Make a Difference here in Denver, Colorado. Give us a little bit of background. What's it about, and who's it for, and when is it?
I love it, man. I just met with him last night. I drove up to Applewood Baptist Church. They don't like saying it because they're like, it's not about our church. And I love that mentality of it. A lot of times churches become businesses and it's like mine, 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 mine. Yeah, everybody can come here, but nobody goes anywhere else, right? So we've been trying to, we call it unite the clans, like, Braveheart kind of talk. Why won't you lead them? Why won't you just unite? And they're stepping up and doing it. And it's, a bunch of older gentlemen. I said, some of my age, some of them a little bit younger, most of my grandpas. And it's the whole, what is happening right now? Where are the men? And they follow the podcast. They asked me, they honored me with saying, would you speak? And it's on February 8th. And man, I should have brought the thing. Do you guys have the information? I think it's menwhomakeadifference.com actually.
Yep.
Register. And our goal is hundreds to get those men that are like somebody should do something, but they're going to hear me say that somebody's you. All right. And not you need to go and I'm going to be behind you pushing you. I'm going, you're invited. So I'm going to go and keep doing what I'm doing as God leads, but I'm going to provide opportunity. We are going to provide constant opportunities to where you can explore and ask God, what's your deal? Like from that meeting, one guy was a chaplain, one guy was prison ministries, other guy want to save babies. This person, and you're like that. Like on a war, there's many fronts. Which one's yours? Okay, no more excuses. Go get to it. So that whole thing of using adventure, and they were talking about, yeah, the babies are getting killed. Then go save them because that's your one thing you just picked. Now get after it and see which door that leads in. We talk tactics. I talk about you have to have the courage to go in the first door to see three more. And then you pick a door, right? And then you pick another door. And before you know it, man, you've cleared a house. While other people are like, somebody should do something. You're like, yeah, welcome to the party, brother. It's like, get to it.
On me. Let's
On
go.
me. On me. Yeah. Amen.
In this book that you gave Stu, I'm a big
You're jelly, aren't you?
I am jelly.
Yeah.
But you said to Stu, I actually scratched it out and just wrote Davidson. Now this is my book. You said, thanks for leveling up. Wounded men still litter the battlefield. Let's go get them. Man,
Yes.
I love that, dude.
Yes. Hey, you know what? I pray before when somebody says write something, I look at the chapters sometimes and sometimes write the title of a chapter or messages in the book. And on that particular one, I thought about it and that Black Hawk Down came to remember at the very, very end and he's loading up again. They're like, what are you doing? He's like, man, there's still men out there. I'm gonna go get can I? He's like, no, you're slowing me down. Like I'm going. But that whole thing, like if people don't know the truth about our brothers, man, they're not doing good. Right. They're
Yeah.
tough guys and they're doing all this stuff and some are successful and some are not, but they're not doing good. Like that purpose thing, they were made for something great and they bought a lie coming out of the military. You guys touched on this on your last podcast. Getting out of the service was a gut punch because there just wasn't anybody looking for like a demo expert and a sniper and a free fall. They're like just wasn't in the cards. But guys, vets need to learn, be willing to learn a new form of warfare. Like all of those basics, all of that stuff, I'd say and I didn't even I operated most of my career without a foundation, right? So I see some guys that are, noble effort, good job, but there's no foundation. So I'd say, spend some time finding that foundation, restructure that life. It's like, can I build on this? And then learn a new form of warfare. And then just, my pastor says this, and I love it. 216. He says, just start saying that there are two genders, two genders, one race, the human race, and 6 literal days. Like God created the world, and people will lose their mind and come for you. And now you're back where It's like, all right, bring it on. And you're like, huh. And even if it's like you're scary and I might get arrested, I'm gonna cancel you. The guys that came, the 80 dudes, just shy of 80 dudes that came and stood with me, and there was police and SWAT teams and all that, and they didn't arrest us. Weird. Why? Because we didn't break the law, right? So they were all timid and scared and all that, and every one of them they felt alive. And they're like, oh, that's kind of gritty. It was touch and go there for a minute. They're like, hey, are we ready to go? I'm like, relax. You're doing great. We'll leave in a minute, and we stayed 45 minutes, and I'm talking to the police captains, all that stuff, and they don't want to arrest me. They know that we're standing for their grandkids. And it was beautiful.
Love it, man. Well,
awesome.
How do we get more information to our listeners? What do we put in the show notes? How do they find out more about Able Shepherd, your book, the conference? Put it all in there.
It's kind of all of it. I'm not, the best with social media. However, what I've been told to say is ableshepherd.com to kind of get to the main thing. I just launched X because we believe there's a big future following there with young people. It's just social media is the deal. And again, if we don't learn a new form of warfare, so Jimmy Graham on X. And then this menwhomakeadifference.com. This is going to be a big one. The goal is to not only do the hit it and forget it conference. It's men that are on fire having a discussion. There's giveaways. There's a ton of giveaways. There's like a 300 Win Mag, rifle. There's all this goodness, trauma kits, all that. And then there's going to be a follow on with a QR code simply saying, like, every week, opportunities for you to stand. Like, as a Christian man, where should you be? So it's like, well, I didn't know. It's like, we're taking that away. Like, if you've got the coin, there's like a poker chip. We got one that says, ours says, don't gamble with eternity. If they scan it, they're going to get a calendar of where they should be standing, right? And goals hundreds, just get hundreds of men, one in action, but then also connected. Like, I get so much out of conversations like this, the men's groups that I facilitate, all that. And it breaks my heart that there are veteran brothers that don't have one person that they can have real conversation. That's got to
It's
end.
real.
Spot on. It's got to end. I love it, buddy. This is an amazing conversation. We could keep on going. We'll honor your time, but we'll put everything in the show notes. And hey, guys in Colorado, let's take some action. Let's get to this conference. Men Who Make a Difference. Jimmy, thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.
God bless you guys.
Thank you, Jimmy. Appreciate you.